Now, usually we'd have the opportunity perhaps to work our way around the room and ask you for your opinion, ma'am, as you shared with your colleague. But I'm teasing you, I've just put you on the spot. Or someone else to share their feedback back, right, on the various topics and themes that we do want to understand and unpack. But it's quite refreshing to see that, again, education the green economy playing a very key role in various aspects as to how it is that organizations, institutions, and of course the rest of us as partners can really play along in unpacking what it means to us and personalizing it and ensuring that that is something that does play a role in how it is that we partner, contribute, and execute on our strategies. So again, a big thank you to Kensi. I was about to tease you, Kensi, and say, are there further commitments that we can find and maybe make our way to at the exhibition stand that Nedbank has? But of course, the reason why they're here is to facilitate and participate in ongoing engagement. So do make sure that you do make your way to the exhibition stand and please do engage and get feedback with them. But we swiftly move along to getting feedback now from one of our other speakers who will join us virtually for a recorded presentation to help us unpack again how it is that we need to find means of joining together and, of course, ensuring that purpose does stick to the ethos of what it is that we're trying to find and work on when it comes to the green economy. If we could take a look at our next video from our next speaker, Trudy Makaya, who joins us virtually for a video presentation to share some of her feedback and insight. A reminder to our audience that's joining us on the platform, please keep your questions coming as there will be a panel discussion that will be up next. And of course, also keeping some of your chats and feedback coming through the platform and in the room. But let's turn our attention now to a video presentation from Trudy Makaya, who will give us some insight and share some of her thoughts with her. Even though she's not present, let's warmly welcome her with a level 3 applause, please.
To the delegates of the 2022 Trilogue Business and Society Conference, warm greetings from Pretoria. The South African economy presents a challenging contradiction. It is a developing middle-income economy with relatively high levels of poverty. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, a fifth of South African households reported experiencing hunger. Over a third of working-age adults are unemployed. Yet, alongside these socioeconomic deficits, the South African economy is in the top 20 in the world when it comes to carbon emissions on a per capita basis. This makes the country an outlier. Countries tend to have high rates of poverty and low levels of carbon emissions, or they are prosperous with high rates of emissions. Our country has to deal with deep-seated and long-standing socioeconomic challenges whilst reducing its relatively high rates of emissions, mostly carbon emissions from coal-based energy generation. Yet we cannot shy away from the fact that South Africa's coal mining industry makes an important contribution to the economy. Its activities employ over 120,000 employees in mining and energy generation. This has a multiplier effect on the livelihoods of over 600,000 people using conservative estimates. This sounds like a terrible situation to be in until one recognizes the opportunities for transitioning to a low-carbon economy. The National Development Plan presents the vision for 2030 as that of a low-carbon, resilient, and just economy. The green economy means many things to different people, but in relation to climate change, it is an expression of all the activities that are required to help the country to adapt to climate change and to mitigate it through lowering emissions. The green economy also refers to economic activities to reduce the intensity of resource usage in the economy, to move towards the use of sustainable materials, to eliminate waste, and to support biodiversity. Efforts to grasp the opportunities of the green economy have been underway for some time. One can think of an early attempt to craft a social compact across society with the Green Economy Accord that was adopted in 2011 and launched at COP17 held in Durban. Government has also put in place various policy instruments including a carbon tax, to ensure that players in the economy receive the correct signals and change their behaviors accordingly. The Presidential Climate Change Commission is working to build a social partnership around the just transition, building on a solid foundation of science and research. The Commission has produced advice and research outputs which present an important resource into key decision-making processes. It convenes stakeholders and helps to build a consensus around pathways for the just transition. South Africa has played a very constructive role in global climate negotiations. The Durban Platform for Enhanced Action, forged at COP17, paved the way for the Paris Agreement, which the country supported even during those difficult times when some global powers were rejecting established climate science. At COP26, South Africa submitted an ambitious, nationally determined contribution of 420 to 350 megatons of CO2 equivalent, which is compatible with Paris Agreement goals. All around us, we have seen the harrowing impact that the effects of climate change can unleash on vulnerable communities. Though it is not always easy to map a direct relationship between climate change and specific disasters, credible science has predicted and shown a link between unusual and extreme weather events on the one hand and climate change on the other. Africa is one of the most vulnerable regions to climate change and does not command the resources to effectively meet and manage these disasters. As President Ramaphosa wrote in October 2021, and I quote, "Many South Africans are already feeling the effects of climate change through drought and flooding, which have an effect on their livelihoods. Several communities in Mpumalanga, for example, are affected by high levels of pollution, which increases respiratory illness and other diseases. Those who are dependent on the ocean for a living have already seen depleted fish stocks amid changing weather patterns and changes in ocean temperature." Close quote. The recent floods in KwaZulu-Natal serve not only as an illustration of the devastating impact of unusually heavy rain, but the need to build resilient infrastructure. South Africa presents one of the best opportunities in the world for climate impact if afforded the right kind of support. At COP26, one of the most important outcomes was the partnership crafted by South Africa and a group of partner countries, the United Kingdom, European Union, France, Germany, and the United States of America. The resources mobilized under this partnership could help to accelerate the transition to a low emissions economy, which would include the transition out of a heavy reliance on coal in line with national circumstances. It will also fund efforts to increase the country's climate resilience and adaptive capacity. The transition of the energy sector could also result in significant net job creation. Government sees three focal areas for the $8.5 billion package, which is under negotiation. The first area is in the electricity sector and its value chains. Energy generation underpins the emissions profile of the economy. In our country, electricity generation contributes 41% of South Africa's greenhouse gas emissions. This financing could be deployed to support Eskom's efforts, which have already begun. Eskom has commenced with the unbundling process towards a transparent electricity supply industry with a fair playing field for all sources of electricity generation. It is also scheduled to decommission at least 8,000 megawatts of aged coal-fired power stations in the next 10 years. This will lead to the reduction of emissions alongside work to repurpose and repower these assets with sustainable technologies. Investments will also be required in the transmission network. a whole new set of economic activities can emerge from the decarbonization of our energy system. The second focal point of the Just Transition Partnership is to ensure that we move our automotive sector to manufacture hybrid and electric vehicles. We will lose our most important export markets, including the European Union, if we do not effect this transition. Much of this will depend on investment by the automotive sector itself, but there is catalytic work that needs concessional finance. This includes support for the transition period to build domestic demand for electric and hybrid vehicles, the development of supportive infrastructure for the usage of electric vehicles, and the development of a battery manufacturing industry. The third focal point for the Just Transition Partnership with our partners is to exploit our significant endowments to develop the green hydrogen value chain for domestic consumption and for export markets. Over the past decade or so, the Hydrogen South Africa program has generated intellectual property that can be elevated and supported to create a world-leading green hydrogen sector. The private sector has already taken keen interest, with leading mining and chemicals companies developing applications for heavy-duty mobility and green power fuels using green hydrogen. Concessional resources can be deployed here to fund feasibility studies that will pave the way for commercial projects. Over the past 4 years of the investment mobilization drive led by President Ramaphosa, we have seen companies make investments in the green economy. The most pronounced investments have been in renewable energy. We have also seen investments in the green hydrogen value chain I just spoke about, in mining for battery minerals, fuel cell components, to name just a few. The financial sector globally has also been under immense pressure to move away from financing those activities that are harmful to the planet. It remains important that this is done in the spirit of a phased and just transition, especially in a continent and country such as ours, which still has to contend with energy poverty. Preserving our planet is a universal aspiration that touches every life. The existential challenges we face in the form of climate change, the loss of biodiversity, and pollution call for a collective solution. All segments of society and all sectors of the economy have a role to play. I will conclude with President Ramaphosa's words as he wrote in the Financial Times last November. We need to act with urgency and ambition to cut greenhouse gas emissions and transition to a low carbon economy. Many of our peer countries have already begun, but the only way for a transition to be successful is if there is a broad commitment to a transition that is just, a journey to net zero that leaves no one behind. The needs of workers and communities in industries and geographies that will be hurt by such a transition must be carefully considered. Organized labor, business, and government need to develop programs of reskilling, employment, compensation for loss of livelihoods, and other support to ensure workers are the major beneficiaries of our shift to a greener future. Close quote. Fitting words in the month that we celebrate Workers' Day. I thank you for your attention.